Okay, in this video tutorial, we're going to talk about creating a multi-plane animation in After Effects. So in order to follow along with this tutorial, you'll need to have kind of already created your walk cycle here and created your multi-layered background. Let's see here. And so what we're kind of going to go over is you can see my animation isn't filled in right here. So I've just exported a raster layer walk cycle, but you can see that I've taken the animation and I've added a multi-plane background and put the character in there and have the floor tracking with the character's footsteps so that they're not sliding. So most of this is happening in After Effects. And so let's see here. Let me pull up Toon Boom Harmony. So hopefully you have your animation ready. And if you filled in your character using vector layers, then you can just go to File, Export, and then export an SWF file. And if you're working with raster layers and you filled things in an organic way, you can check out my tutorial that goes over that technique right there. So working on this project, one thing that's really important in After Effects is that you work in folders, because in After Effects, you are linking all the files that you're using. And so if you don't have a folder structure, your files are going to get lost right here. So essentially what you want to do is create a folder directory and name it for your project. And then within that folder directory, you want to create some subfolders in here where you can put in your assets. And so you don't have to have it organized exactly like this, but I recommend that you at least have a folder for audio in here. And so if you're on a Mac, you just right click, go to new folder, create an audio folder. I have a folder right here where I have my After Effects project right here. And I have export. So when we're done with the animation, we'll export it to this folder right here. We have footage, which you're not going to need for this. This force a habit right here if you have any footage you want to use. And then finally, I have images. And you can see I've imported my background image right here. And I have my walk cycle right here. So I have an SWF version of a walk cycle that we'll try out. And then I have my walk cycle that I just showed earlier right here. So to get set up, you need to create all these folders right here and just drag in your assets into this directory. And then when you want to back up your projects, you want to save your After Effects project, but also take this folder and just drag it onto an external hard drive. And if you're creating your backups on the cloud, you'll want to right click and then compress this and take that compressed file and drag that onto the cloud. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, you might want to review one of my earlier videos that goes over how to set up projects. So let's see here. So we have this right here. And so let's talk about how we're going to get to this point. So I'm just going to start my project from scratch right here. So I'll just go File, New project right here. So I have an empty After Effects project. And before I really get started, what I want to do is I want to have this organized over here, my project directory. So let me put this in the bottom corner. So in my project directory, I'm going to create a new folder right here, and I'll make a folder called Images. I'm going to make a folder called Comps for my compositions. If you're going to use audio, mine is not going to use audio, but if you're going to use audio, have an audio folder. And let's see here. And I think that'll be okay, at least for this current project. So I want to import some images in here. So I'm going to go to images right here, and I'm just going to go up to the top and go File, Import, File. And I've already dragged all my assets into that project directory that we were talking about before. So I have things under images. And so the walk cycle I'm going to show us is going to be, let's do this walk cycle 2 right here. And so I had to export a PNG sequence for this one. So if you have a PNG sequence, you're just going to select the first one in the sequence right here. And right here, you have this option for PNG sequence right there. So you just want to make sure that this is turned on. And I don't really need a composition created for that, I don't believe. So I'm just going to have file 1 selected, choose PNG sequence right there, and press open. And it brings it in as a sequence right here. And you can see right here that this is coming in at 30 frames per second, but I actually want this to be 24 frames per second. And it's going to only repeat once. So I'm going to show you all how to kind of fix that issue right here. So before I show how to fix that issue, let's create a new composition. So I'm just going to select on my comps folder right here. And I can create a new composition by clicking this button right here, or you can go up to the top and go composition, new composition right here. So I'll click that and this folder will come up. And what I want is I want 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames per second. And that just happens to be the very first preset at the top right here. And so you can see we have presets right here, or you can manually type in exactly what dimensions you want right here. But again, just to keep life easy, you just want to go to this first option, click it, and then you're ready to go. And so I'll call this walk cycle 1 right there. And it's at 24 frames per second. If this is a different number for you, you just want to click on this and change that to the correct frame rate. So we're going to have to set the frame rate correctly here, and we're also going to have to set the frame rate correctly over here as well for this walk cycle. So resolution at full is good. And this is the duration right here. So this is the frames right here. This is seconds. So right now this would be a 12-second animation, minutes, and then hours right there. And then this is the background color right here. And it actually doesn't matter at all what you choose right here because it'll be invisible upon render. So I will just press OK when I have that. And you can see it created a new composition that shows up right here. Notice that compositions show up as this little film strip with the little icons on there. And then my composition showed up right here. Then my timeline filled. And remember, it was 12 seconds long. So it's 12 seconds long right there. And so now let's take this walk cycle and drag it into our composition. So in order to do that, all I need to do is just click on my PNG walk cycle and drag it in like that, and it'll come in. And I need to set this frame rate to be correct right here. So right now it's coming in at 30 frames per second, and it's only repeating once, and then it disappears after that point. So you could hypothetically select this layer right here and press Command D, and that's the shortcut for edit duplicate over here. So edit, and then where's that duplicate right there? And I could hold shift and just kind of keep doing that and have my walk cycle repeat like this. But I'm going to fix both of our problems in the same place right here, and it'll make it so our composition doesn't get messy here as well. So I'm just going to take, sorry, these repeats and press delete. And oops, this bar just is always in my way. Okay, so in order to set the frame rate to be interpreted correctly over here and have this repeat, we do this in the same place, which is you select your image sequence right here. And then you can click on this button right here, which is called interpret footage. You can also right click on it and go to interpret footage in the main right there. But the easier thing to do is just to click this button, have it selected, click this button. And so right here, you can see, assume this frame rate is set to 30 by default, and we want that to be 24. And then here's a really fun one down here is this is set to loop one time and then it stops. But if I just type in some big number right here, I'll type in 50 and press OK. You can see that this kind of grayed out over here. And if I want my animation to repeat, I can just click it and drag it. And so now, instead of just going for about 2 seconds and then stopping, you can see my walk cycle is now an actual walk cycle. So I'm going to have my animation set to 8 seconds long right here. That's just going to be my plan right here. And I can do that just by holding shift, just taking my playhead to 8 seconds right there. And then if I hold shift, this will snap to that, where the playhead is right there. And so we have that walk cycle in. So that's how to bring in a PNG walk cycle. If you have an SWF, it's going to be really similar. So if you notice, I also had an SWF walk cycle, a different walk cycle. So to bring that in, we're going to start the same way. So file, import file, and we're going to go back to images, and then I have this SWF file right here. I don't need to click any of this in here. I can just press open and it'll come right in. And so you can see up here, this one is coming in correctly at 24 frames per second. If it was coming in at 30 frames per second, I would just select it and click on the same button again and make that change right there in this section right here. But you can see it's also set to loop one time. So I'll just type in 50 again so that this will loop a bunch of times. And so now when I click this and drag it in, I have this walk cycle right here that will loop for basically forever right there. So that's how you can bring in your walk cycles right there. And so the next thing I want to show is how to make it so that we can track the character so that the ground doesn't slide underneath of them. And I kind of do something a little bit different here that I'm going to show. But before I do that, let's bring in our multiplanar background. So under the images folder, I'm going to go up to File, Import, and then File, and find my multiplane background right here. So I just mocked this up in Illustrator, and it's divided up into a few different layers back here. You can see this is a really long composition. And so I'm just going to select that. And you can do this for Illustrator or Photoshop. So if you're working in Illustrator, just save it as an AI file. If you're working in Photoshop or Procreate or anything like that, just save it as a PSD file. And when you import it, instead of going to footage right here, you're just going to go down and go to composition right here. And we're going to import this as a composition. And you can choose retain layer sizes, and that's really good for actually for most of the time when you're bringing in compositions. But for this particular example, we're just going to bring it in as a composition. And I'll press open. And you can see right here, it brought it in as a composition right there. But you can see also in here, it's bringing in each of my Illustrator layers as individual files right here. And so if you're working in Photoshop, it'll do it the same way. So if I were to drag this and bring it in right here, let's just give it, oh yeah, let's see here. This is not a transparent walk cycle I have right there. All right, so you can see when I bring that in, that I have the foreground on a layer, which is over here. I just have like a tree that'll be passing by in the foreground. I have the road and the grass right here. In Illustrator, you can turn off and on the visibility with this I button right here. And just to kind of go ahead and start getting organized with this, I'm just going to start color coding this. So the foreground, I'll make red. So I'm just going to click on this box right here, right click, and then choose red. For the road and the grass, those are going to be on the same plane. So I'll right click, go to yellow. Let's see here. The trees will move along their own layer. So I'll just, again, continue to kind of color code this. You don't need to do this, but this is just what I prefer to do. And let's just, okay. So we have, you don't need to have this you don't need to have this in as many layers as I do right here. And the way I color coded it is the way that I plan on separating out the layers. But before we get to tracking the background in here, I'll just go ahead and hide all these. And I have a specific trick that I like to do for this. And so what I like to do is I like to get the floor underneath the character's feet tracking for 1 second right here. And I'll do that using shape layers. And then after we get it working for 1 second, we'll just kind of use some basic math to just get it, the velocity of the ground moving consistently across 8 seconds right here. So in order to do this, I'm going to use what's called a shape layer in After Effects. And so to create a shape layer, you just go up to Layer, New, and then Shape Layer right here. And it's just going to create an empty layer right here. Nothing shows up, but you can see that it creates a shape layer. This right here, and the shape layer is indicated by the star icon right there. And with a shape layer, there's a bunch of, it's really helpful for motion design typically, but you can make different shapes on here using a couple different methods. So you can go up to the toolbar up here and go up to the rectangular tool, and you can create like star shapes right here, or I can just click it and hold on and create rectangles. Or you can do something like using the pen tool right here, and on a shape layer, you can draw on a shape using the pen tool. If you've used Adobe Illustrator before, this works exactly the way that Adobe Illustrator works right there. And oops, let's see here. And you could draw out your own shape right there. So let me just, and so when you create a shape layer, you can see underneath the shape layer, you can click it open. And normally within Adobe Illustrator, let's just take one of these, let's take the foreground layer of my Illustrator file right here. When I click this little tab down, I just get the transform option. And so the transform option, for anyone who's unfamiliar in Illustrator, is where you can animate the position of an object. So you can move it left to right or up and down. You can animate the scale of the layer by scaling it up and down. And so it's at 100%. You can rotate it. And the anchor point is way back here. And so I zoomed out just by using my middle mouse wheel right there. But you can rotate an image right there. You can scale it right here. And you can also animate the opacity right there. And if you want this anchor point to be in a different spot, by the way, you can just use this tool right here or press Y and then move that anchor point. And so now when it rotates, it'll rotate around that point right there. So the anchor point, which is this top indication up here, is this little mark right here. And the best way to move the anchor point, again, is this tool right here, or pressing Y is the shortcut. And then you can just physically move the anchor point. And sometimes that can be useful. So with all that aside, with the shape layer, when you open it, it's not just that transform menu, which is what we're just going through just then. It also gives you this contents menu, and it shows you each of the different shapes that you created. So I made this kind of weird shape right here. And if I don't like it, I can just select it and press delete, and then it's gone. But I still have my shape containment layer right here. So to get this floor to track correctly, what I want to do is just click on this, and then I'm going to create a star tool right here. And I'm just going to create a few small ones and track it along the ground right here. And what these are going to be is they're going to work as markers right here. So I just clicked it and dragged it. I held shift so it would draw out uniformly, or sorry, snap like that. And I can, if I want it to be a little bit smaller, you can see right here. Let's see here. There we go. So I'm just going to draw a few of these out, and I'm going to just try to line it up a little bit with the foot. And so you can hold spacebar and shift right here, and that'll keep the star right side up, and you can reposition it right there. And I'm just going to make a few of these stars. And what these are going to be working as is little markers that I can use to track the pace of this character's feet right here. And you can see each time I draw out a star, it creates a new star right here. And if I want to track sometimes it can be helpful in order to kind of track this well for the stars to be different colors. And so the easiest way to do that is I can just select this star 7. And then if you go up here to fill, I should be able to quickly change the color right there. And so I'm just going to almost randomly just go through and change the color of these stars. You don't really need to do this, but I just kind of find it helpful to just help me kind of track the movement as best as I can right here. And so that's just the fill color of these different shape layers. And so I just drew out these stars right here. And then I can see right here that I have my shape layer, and I'm just zoomed in, again, using my middle mouse wheel and then holding spacebar. Or you can hold down, let's see, yeah, sorry, spacebar. I'm getting my programs mixed up. If you tap spacebar, it plays. And then if you hold down spacebar, it gives you the pan tool right here. And then you can zoom in and out using your middle mouse wheel. Or you can zoom in and out using this right here and zoom in like at 200% right there, 400%, and zoom in that way. So I just have these stars lined up. And so I can move the stars individually right here. So this is the first star. And if I use my selection tool, I can move the star around. Or I can just click on the shape layer and move them all at the same time. And that's what we're going to do right here. And so basically, the idea is these shape layers are going to work as a placeholder for the ground. And I'm going to animate the movement of the star layer. And then we're going to copy that movement and put it onto our road layer down here. So let's see here. If it doesn't make sense, hopefully that'll become clear here in just a minute. So I'm just kind of lining this up with the feet right here. And, oh, whoops, I'm on the wrong frame. Sorry, bring your playhead to the very first frame, then line this up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm kind of done messing with the shape layer's contents, and I'm going to worry about animating its position at this point. So in order to animate the position, I'm going to generate my first keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch that's next to the word position. So I just open up the shape layer, go down to position. My playhead is at the very first frame. I'm going to click this, and you can see right there, it creates my first keyframe right there. And then I'm just going to go 1 second in right here. And you can see I'm 1 second in with this indication right here. Also, if I were to zoom in on this playhead, it would be at 1 second right there. And I'm zooming in just by clicking on the slider right here. I can click these mountains as well. You can also press the plus button or the minus button to zoom in and out. And so I'm just going to track the pace of my character's movement for 1 second right here. And so you can see right here that the green star is on their rear foot. This fuchsia star is on their other rear foot. This red star is lining up with their front paw that's kind of closer to us right here. So in my drawing, the paws that are closer to us are white, and then the ones that are further away are shaded right there. And so I'm just going to kind of look at my animation right here. And I can see at 1 second right here. And what I'm going to do here is go to position. And then you can see here, I'm just dragging from right to left right here and bringing the stars backwards. And so let's just see what this looks like right here. And this usually takes a few tries. So I'm looking right now, my eyes on this fuchsia star right here, and I'm trying to line it up with the pace of that paw. So I think I need to speed it up a little bit. And basically, we're just going to try to get this 1 second moving correctly right here. So one thing I'm already running into is you can see as I'm dragging my playhead, I animated my character in 2s, but this is in 1s. So here's a really fun effect that I like to use that will help you track this better. It'll make this a lot easier for you, especially if you animate it in 2s or if you animate it in like 3s or 4s. And if you animate it in 1s, then you don't need what I'm about to show. So in After Effects, you can create something called an adjustment layer. And so in order to do that, I'm just going to go up to Layer, New, and then Adjustment Layer right here. And then it creates this adjustment layer. And what it does is you can add an effect to that adjustment layer, and any layer that's underneath it here on the timeline will be affected by whatever visual effect that you put on here. But any layer that's above it will not be affected. So you can see that my walk cycle's up here. It's not affected, but anything underneath will be affected. And I'm just going to press return, which is a shortcut to rename a layer. And I'll call this Posterize Time. And I'm going to look for the Posterize Time effect. And so in order to look for effects, you can either go up to effect up here and try to find it up here, or you can go up to the effects and presets window, and you can see there's this little search window right here. And if you don't see effects and presets, just go to window and then look for effects and presets, and then it'll open it up for you. So you can see it took it away right there, but if I click on it again, it brings it back. And what I'm going to look for is an effect called Posterize Time. And so you can see this is under the time menu, and I'm just going to click on that and then drag it onto my adjustment layer right there. And so what Posterize Time does, and this is a really fun effect that I like to use a lot, is right now the frame rate is set to 24. And let's just look at the layers of the star movement. So right now, that's just 24 frames per second. But remember, I animated my character on 2s. So if I type in the number 12, and so the idea of animating in 2s is you're drawing every other frame. So that means you're going to have 12 drawings per second right there. And so now if we look at this with Posterize Time set to 12, you can see this has the movement as if it was animated on 2s. And so if you animate it on 3s, the number would be 8, because 8 times 3 is 24, right? And then if you animate it in 4s, that's 6 drawings per second. So you would have it on 6 right there. So depending on how you animated your character, your number is either going to be, what was it, 6, 8, or 12, or not using this effect at all. So for me, my character is in twos, so 12 will be the right number for me right there. And so what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that when I just move my playhead, it'll help me kind of track this a little bit better, because you can see, keep your eye on this red star right here. I'm going to turn Posterize Time off. When I'm moving my playhead manually, you can see it's kind of moving when my foot's not moving, and that can be a little visually confusing, at least for me. So I'll turn Posterize Time on. And so now you can see that this star, if the pace is correct, should line up with kind of where this front part of the leg lands right there. And so right here, it's pretty close already. Up, it starts to fall behind a little bit there. So if anything, it might be a little too slow. Let's keep our eye on another foot. So now I'm going to keep my eye on this rear foot right here with this fuchsia star. And you can see the foot starts to catch up to it. So it looks like my movement's a little slow. So in order to kind of increase the pace of this movement right here, I'm just going to drag my play ahead. I'll hold shift so it snaps to this keyframe right here that's 1 second in. And so I had it at 6:37, and that wasn't quite enough. So let's try 6:01. And so this will be different for you because your character, is going to be moving at a different pace than mine. But the idea is we're trying to make it so that the feet don't slide right here when we kind of put in our ground. So let's look at this foot now. So I have this other fuchsia star. And so when it lands, the star is slightly behind the foot, and the foot still starts to catch up to it. So that might be a little bit behind. Let's look at this fuchsia star. Okay, so I still need to make this a little bit quicker. So let's try 5:37. Let's see where we are on that. That's starting to feel a lot better to me. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm following the red star. And if anything, that's too fast, but it's pretty close. Let's follow this fuchsia star. That's pretty good. So maybe it's a little too fast, so I'll just bring the number up just a little bit. Oops, so I'll do 5:45. Okay, so I think that's pretty good right there. And so the tricks that I'm doing here is I feel like it's much easier to kind of manage the movement with only having to track 1 second of animation right here. And with the Posterize Time, it makes it a little easier to track with my eye. So all I've done is I brought in my walk cycle. I made sure that it came in at 24 frames per second. I created a shape layer and just added a bunch of stars on there and made them different colors because it just helped me kind of visually work through the step that I just did. Then I went to the position of the shape layer and I generated a keyframe at 0 frames right here. And then I tried to kind of track this with my eyes for 1 second right here, and then created a second keyframe right there. And so right now, the animation looks like that. And so hopefully the floor, when we put it in, won't feel like it's sliding. But the problem now is we only have 1 second of animation here. But you can see right here that we're just going to take this number. So this is where a little math comes in, but it's not too bad. I'm terrible at math, and I'm still able to do this. So our initial position is 944 right here. So we have the X and the Y position right here, and we're only moving this left or right. So I only need to worry about the first number. That second number just stays at 540 right there. So this starts at 944. And then I'm going to subtract 545 from that, because that's the number of my second keyframe right there. So 944 was my first keyframe. I press minus and then 545. So 399. So basically, this shape layer should be moving 399 pixels. That's kind of the measurement right there per second. So if I wanted my animation, if I wanted this to track for 4 seconds right here, then I would do 399 times 4. Times 5, times 6, times 7, right? It's per second right here. So I want my animation to be 8 seconds long. So let's do this calculator. So I need to take 399 and then multiply by 8 for 8 seconds. And so right there is going to be 3,192. And this number is going down, right? So I need to take 944 and then subtract that number right there. So the last step is I'm going to subtract this number from my initial number. So 944 minus 3142 is negative 2,198. So all I need to do is just take this keyframe or make a new keyframe at 8 seconds in right here. And then I just need to copy and paste that number in there. So what was it? It was negative 2,100 and, oh my gosh, I already forgot it. 2,198. Right there. And so now we're going to start running out of stars right here. So let me just quickly select the shape layer and draw in a few more stars right here, just so that we can track this over 8 seconds. I'm not going to even bother with making different colors. And so now you can see my animation, if we can get it to render out here. Sorry, sometimes the RAM preview has a hard time going through the whole thing. But you can see right here, sometimes kind of scrubbing through helps it kind of work through the process, that the stars are tracking pretty well along the ground right here. Let me see if I can get this going a little bit more. I can also go under this preview tab. Instead of tapping spacebar, I can press this play button, and sometimes I'll get you better results. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to kind of track the top of these stars. That's kind of the reason I use the star as my shape for this, is just so that I can track this as best as possible. So that's pretty decent. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And so the idea right here is that we only have 2 keyframes, and I initially had it for 1 second, and then I multiplied it until it became 8 right there. And so you might be wondering now, like, where is this all going right here? So we have like these weird stars tracking underneath the character. And so we're basically going to use the shape layer as a null object for the ground, meaning we're just going to parent the ground to the star layer, and then the ground is going to track along with our character. So take whatever, so kind of get to this step where you have the ground tracking along the feet of your character right there. And so now let's bring in our multi-plane animation. So I have my grass and the road. It's kind of separated into 2 layers. It really should have just been one for me right there. And so that's these 2 layers. And so hopefully you just have it on 1 layer, but if you need to have 2 layers connected together, these are the parent tools right here. And so if you just click on this little pick whip right here, I can parent my grass to the road right here, because again, you can kind of see these are each on different layers when I solo them using the solo button over here. And so to parent it, I just click this pick whip that's next to the grass. And so I'm clicking on it, and then I'm just dragging it until it clicks onto the road. And so now when I move the road, the grass moves with it. Whereas before, I'll press edit undo. When I select the road, it just moves on its own and the grass doesn't move with it. So again, I'm just going to parent the grass to it like that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent the grass, or sorry, parent the road to that shape layer right there. You see that? So I just took the road right here and then parented it to my shape layer, the stars. And so now you can see that the road is moving along the path of the stars. Something that's nice about parenting something is that movement is kind of added on top of the road, but I can still click on the road right here and fix its position right there. And since it's parented to the stars, it'll still move correctly. And I don't have the movement perfect right there, but hopefully you get the idea. It's pretty close right there. And so now one more fun thing about this method right here is the shape layer is we don't need it anymore. Boop, gone. So I'm just hiding its visibility right there. We don't want to delete it. So don't delete that shape layer because again, our road is parented to it, but the shape layer is just working as our like null object. So I'll just call it shape null object. And when I say null object, I mean an object that isn't visible on screen that is helping you parent movement. Let's see here. And so right there, you can see that the road is moving. And so we're in pretty good shape right there. And so next up, with the multiplane camera move, things are going to move at different velocities right here. So let's take a mid-ground layer. So I have some trees off in the distance right here. And so if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that that's a really wide layer right there. Oh, I'm sorry. So I just caught something. So the road runs out right there. So I just need to click it and then just drag it a little bit further. So now I don't run out of real estate once we get to 8 seconds in. Something else we can do is just so that our animation loops when we ran preview it is we have this upper bar right here, which is kind of our in and out points. I can just hold shift and snap it to that endpoint right there. So hopefully when this is done, you see I just tap space bar and then it goes back to the beginning right there. So now my animation will, essentially loop right there. And so now, sorry about the interruption there. So now we're going to go to trees right here. So I have some trees in the background. So these will just be a little bit off in the distance right here. And so the hard part's done now. Now we're into the easy part right here. So remember, I still have the shape layer right here. I want to see the position keyframes right here. So I can either click on this tab right here and open things up. But a fun shortcut you can do is you can either press P and that'll just bring up your position keyframe. If I press S, that'll be the scale, T for transform. But another really fun keyframe right here, I use the word fun loosely, is if you press U, U is the shortcut that just brings up anything that's keyframed within a layer, it'll just only bring that up. So if I had the scale animated and I pressed U, it'd bring up the scale, but here I have the position animated. So I pressed U and it just brought it right up. So here, I'm just going to select these keyframes just by dragging like that and pressing Command C on a Mac, or you can go up to Edit and then Copy right there, whatever your normal edit, copy and paste commands are. This is really important. You drag the playhead to the beginning right here. And then I'm going to go to my trees layer right there. I'll press P right there to bring up position. And remember, U wouldn't work here because I don't have any keyframes on that yet. And then I'll just press Command V. And so right now, the trees are just going to move at the exact same pace as the road right here. And you can see right here, I run out of tree room right there. And you're like, oh no, we already copied and pasted our keyframes. Well, there's a good trick around that. So I'll just click this tab open and I'll go to anchor point right here. Remember anchor point? That was that thing I was talking about right here where I told you could shift the anchor point by using this, it was called the pan behind tool or the Y button right there. And we're actually not going to use that tool. We're going to change the anchor point a different way. And so this is if you copy and paste your keyframes and then you run out of room at the end. Is I'm just going to take my anchor point right here and I'll just click it and drag it. And you can see the position keyframes have already been animated, but this is just another way you can reposition this, your drawing layer right there. And so now, since I just shifted my whole anchor point over to the right a little bit, it made it so that I don't run out of real estate at the end there, even though I've already copied and pasted my keyframes. So right now the trees are moving at the exact same pace as the ground, which is actually not what I want because I want the trees to look like they're a little bit further off in the distance. And so the way multiplane animations work is the closer something is, the faster it'll move because it's closer to you relative. And then the further away it is, it's going to move a little bit slower. And so all I need to do right here is I'm looking at the X position keyframe. So we start at 944. The number keeps going down and down and down as our trees track from right to left right there. So it moves all the way down from a 900 number all the way down to 2000. So something I can do is I can just go to this last keyframe right here and I can just hold shift and snap it to that keyframe right there. Make sure that you don't generate a keyframe that's like right here, right? Make sure that your playhead is right on top of that keyframe. And then right here, I'm just going to type in a different number that's a little less movement. So let's just say it moved from 900 to negative 2000. So now let's type in negative 1200 right here. And then I'll click that. And so now this layer is going to move less. All right, so right here, sorry, I got a call. All right, so here we go. So again, that I moved the number from negative 2000 to negative 1200. And so now the trees will just be moving slightly slower than the grass right there. So it kind of feels almost like the trees are, I kind of think of these as like medium-sized, like baby trees or tall bushes are, maybe like 30 feet behind the character right there. Is kind of what that feels like to me. And so that's all I had to do is I just copied and pasted these two keyframes. And then as I move further off into the distance, I just take this number right here and just make sure that it's moving less than the layer that was in front of it. So right here, let's just move a little bit further off into the background. So I have these other two layers, which I think I can combine into one. I just have these two hills. And I'm going to combine them together just by parenting this layer right here to the other. If I was a little more organized, I just would have had these just as come in as one layer. So or I could animate them to be all separate where I get an extreme multiplane effect. Anyway, I'm digressing here. So I'm just going to click on this pick whip and parent it to there. And so I just press P to bring up the position. And I'm just going to drag and select these two position keyframes that come from my tree line right there. I'm going to bring my playhead back to the 0 keyframe, and then I'm going to paste those keyframes onto my hills right here. So I'll just press Command V. So now my hills are moving at the same pace as my tree line. Same thing. I'm just going to take my playhead, bring it to the final keyframe right here, and make sure that it's directly on it. So holding Shift helps snap it right there. And instead of it being negative 1200, let's just have this be negative 500. Oops. There we go. So now it's going to be moving significantly less, right? So those hills are moving at a much slower speed right there. And so we're starting to kind of get this multi-plane effect happening right here. And so I only have one more layer left right here. And actually I have two more, I'm sorry. So I have the sky background, which I highlighted fuchsia back there. And so I'm just going to either press this button right here, or you can press P as a shortcut and just make sure the layer is selected. And then I'm going to select these two keyframes right here, press Command C or go edit copy, select this layer, the sky layer at the back, bring your playhead back to the beginning. And it's really important that you bring the playhead back to the beginning, because if I paste right here, you can see the sky is not going to move at the beginning, which is, oops, let me turn it on. And then it'll start moving, which is weird, right? So we just want to make sure that we have the playhead back at the beginning, press Command V, and make sure that the visibility is on right here. So now the sky is moving at the same pace as the hills. And we'll do the same thing one more time. So I'm just going to hold Shift, bring the playhead back to this final keyframe, select that last keyframe. And so the beginning number is like 944, I believe, 940 something. So I'll just bring this to, instead of being negative 500, let's just have it be 200. So we're bringing it up to a positive number. And so now the sky is going to be moving less than anything. You can see it's still moving. If I put my mouse on the end of that cloud, you can see the cloud's still tracking from left to right, but it's just moving slower and slower as we're moving into the background. And so you can see just by animating these different planes at different velocities, we're starting to get a really nice kind of 3D movement effect right here. So to add one more layer on top of that, so we have the foreground, which is this tree that's in the foreground right here. And on this foreground layer, I don't have a lot going on. I just have this one tree, and then there's nothing else in this foreground layer, so it's only going to pass by once. So you could, if you have like a complicated foreground, you could do the same thing we've been doing right here, which is You know what? I'll kind of continue to use the same process. So I'm just gonna go back up to my shape layer right here. Select those two keyframes right there. Remember, that's the first one that we animated for this for the floor plane right here. And I'll select those two keyframes, press Command C, select my foreground layer, I'll press P to bring up position and bring my playhead back to the beginning right here. Press Command V, and let's see where that tree passes by. So the tree is passing by at the beginning, which I don't like. So let's change the anchor point by, I'm just clicking this tab open. I could have pressed A as well right there. And I'm just going to shift the tree forward, but you can see this isn't affecting our position keyframes, which is nice. So just remember, there's kind of two ways you can move an object around on your After Effects scene. You can animate or move the anchor point or the position point. So we have kind of two layers within a layer where we can move it. So I'm going to have the tree start right there, and then it's going to pass by right there. But right now, the tree is going the same speed as the road and the grass right there. And so I'm just going to hold Shift, go back to my last keyframe, and I'm going to, instead of going from a 900 number down to 2,198, I'll have this go much faster. So I'll just do negative, let's say, what do we want to do? 3,000 right there. And so now it's going to kind of move pretty quickly compared to the middle ground. Actually, I'm going to have that go by even quicker. So let's do a negative 4,500 right here. Oops. And so it really depends on how much in the foreground do you want this foreground layer to appear. So if I want it, let's just go really, I'll go 8,000. Let's see what we get right here. Right. So actually that's probably a little bit better, is negative 8,000. And I feel like the position of this tree is a little wrong. You can see that up there. So I'm just going to take the anchor point and then shift it up a little bit. I could also scale the trees just by on scale, just clicking and dragging left to right there, just to make it a little bit bigger. And you can also see that the tree is behind my character. So if you want the tree to appear in front of your character, I need to take this tree and move it up on top of everything. And I'm going to take my Posterize Time adjustment layer and put that on the top as well. So right here, you can see that my animation looks like this right now. So again, I just took my foreground layer and then put it on the very top. And then I put my Posterize Time layer and put it on the top as well, just so that it would also affect my tree layer. If I don't want the Posterize Time effect to kind of hit my character right here, something else I could have done is kept my Posterize Time where it was. And you should see in After Effects, we have a project tab right here and then an effects tab right here. So you can see my Posterize Time effect. So I could have taken the Posterize Time effect, selected right here, press Command C or edit copy, and then select this foreground layer and paste it onto that. So just up here, I'll select this effects box, press Command V. And so now that Posterize Time effect is both on the adjustment layer and it's on my tree layer, but it's not on my character. Just for some reason you wanted it to kind of not hit your character at all. So this is what the animation looks like with Posterize Time on right here. And again, I think that the Posterize Time really helps with, especially just kind of helping you track your character at first. I think it's really, really hard to track the ground, at least for me personally, without using the Posterize Time effect. And right now, this is kind of like old school almost, where the frame rate is the same across the board. So the frame rate for my character is the same for all these background layers. And I kind of personally like that look, but that's just kind of part of, my particular style, I guess. So you could just turn off Posterize Time. So I have to do it twice since I kind of showed you that other way. And so now my character is going to be animated in twos, but everything else is going to be animated in ones again, essentially. So it really just kind of depends on what look you want. If there's not a right or wrong answer between having Posterize Time on or off, generally speaking. Sometimes it can look too janky, like if if it's left on, you know. So it's just kind of two different styles that you get right here. So again, I like to use the posterize time just to make sure that I'm able to track the feet. And I usually leave it on depending on the project, just because I like the look of it. But you can see right here, this is like a little bit more of a smooth look that we're getting right here. So this is posterize time effect off right here. And then this is posterize time turned back on again. So let's just let this RAM preview again. Oops, I keep grabbing that. Let's see here. And so it's having a little trouble previewing through the end right here. My disk cache is probably full. So yeah, so you can kind of see those two styles kind of coming together right there. And something that's really fun in After Effects is, again, I was showing the posterize time effect, but all the effects that you have, like for instance in Photoshop, you have here, and you can kind of use adjustment layers and have it affect your entire project right here. Or you can have it affect one object at a time right here. So let's just say that I want my foreground layer to be darker right here. As I can select my foreground layer right here. So that layer right there. And I can add new effects just by going over to my effects and presets tab right here. Or I can add new effects over here just by going up to, let's see here, up here, effects. And I can do like color correction, and you can do things like curves or levels to make adjustments to the brightness right here, right? So I'm just taking with the effects level, sorry, the levels control right here. This is our midtones, our darks, and our brights right here. So if I can press the brights, you can see it brightens it up right there. If I can press the darks, it darkens it right there. And then the mid is kind of the midtones, and you can, with a simple layer like this, it has a similar look as just taking one of these sliders, but it's a little more complicated than that. So anyway, so you can kind of change the effects that way. You can do things like, let's just say, I'm not sure if this will work because I haven't tested this yet, but I could go to effect and go to like stylize, and let's try to add a glow effect onto the sky. Let's just see what that looks like. That's probably going to be a little bit too much. Let me try something else right here. So let's say I have my posterize time right here, and let's try that glow effect again. So effect, and it's under stylize and then glow right here. And I've added this onto my adjustment layer. And with a glow effect, this can look good. If so, right now the glow radius is at 10, which is a little abrupt, but you can see as I increase that, it gets a little more gradual as it continues to work. We have things like the glow threshold. So this is the threshold in which the glow starts to happen. And then we have the glow intensity right here. So we can have the glow be something a lot more subtle, you know? So right now I have it dragged down to 0.1. And so for some of your projects, this might look better than for others, right? So for mine, I'm not sure if it looks great. Maybe if I used it really subtly, that it could work right here. And I can turn it off and then on again right there to try that out. And so, yeah, there's a lot of really good effects that you can use in here. And you can see on my screen, I probably have more effects than you likely have unless you use After Effects a lot. So there's a lot of really good third-party plugins that you can use to kind of achieve different effects as well.